Hello, I'm JP Rose and I'm the author of Birdie, and I wanted to take you back to 1952 where Birdie is set. And Birdie is a little girl who's sent away to live with a great aunt, and there she meets a pit pony. And a lot of horses these days, like this one, is kept for pets and for having fun and for sport. But back then, in 1952, there were pit ponies, and pit ponies had a terrible time. Let me tell you a little bit more about them. Unlike my horse, Apache, pit ponies spent most of their lives underground. This is my other pony, Boo, and in the 1870s, there would have been a likelihood of Boo working down in the pits. By 1842, Parliament had passed the law so that women and children under 10, boys under 10, wouldn't be able to work underground anymore. So what they did was recruit more ponies. So by the 1870s, there were over 200,000 ponies working in this country. Pit ponies, once they went down the mine, they only came up once a year if they were lucky. So pit ponies really were the unsung heroes of the coal industry. Can you imagine what it felt like the first time the ponies were lowered down into the dark tunnels? Ponies and horses don't like small spaces, so is everything that they were frightened of. They used to sleep there, work there and eat there. But what did a day in the life of a pit pony look like? Pit ponies were mainly used to pull heavy tubs of coal with the miners, and they did all the heavy work on uneven tracks, which often damaged their hooves, and it put a great strain on their bodies. Their working day was sometimes 16 hours long. Can you imagine working 16 hours without any break or food or water sometimes? Pit ponies were looked after by a man called a handler down in the mines, and they used to attach the ponies to the carts. And sometimes ponies used to pull up to 30 tons of coal a day. 30 tons of coal, can you imagine that? That's a huge amount. But they also worked in the dark, which was very tricky for them. But they learned special skills because ponies and horses are very clever, so they taught themselves special skills. How to turn tightly in the tiny, narrow tunnels. And they also learned to open the ventilation doors with their heads. They were very, very clever. Pit ponies suffered a lot of injuries, from falling rocks to getting their feet caught in the tracks. It was a very, very brutal life. Thankfully, we don't use pit ponies anymore in this country, and the last pit ponies left the mine between 1994 and 1999. I'm going to read a small extract from Birdie, and this is when Birdie has been chased into the mine by a group of bullies in the village. Birdie is from the city of Leeds, and now she's living in the small village of Barrington Dale with her great aunt, but she has no idea that pit ponies exist. In the darkness, Birdie heard the noise once more. She stepped back. "Keep away. Please just keep away from me." Her words shook as she lifted the dim lamp, trying to see who it was, what it was. But she was too terrified to look properly, and she scrunched her eyes shut as tightly as she could. Something brushed against her hand. She squealed, scrambling away, desperate to escape from whatever it was, hiding in the darkness of the tunnels. But she lost her footing on the track, and she fell, tumbling and sliding onto the rough, hard ground. It was above her now. Whoever, whatever it was standing there. Her words came rushing out as she tried to squeeze her eyes shut even tighter. "Please don't hurt me. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I know I shouldn't have come down here. I know I shouldn't." But before Birdie could continue, she felt a warmth on her face and heard a strange snort. Slowly she opened one eye. She peered in the flickering light and gasped. Then she rubbed her eyes as quickly as she could with her sleeve in case she was seeing imaginary things. She blinked and blinked again. But this time there was no mistaking it. There, right in front of her, was a pony just standing there. "What are you doing here?" Birdie whispered. "Did you get lost and all?" The pony snorted again, and she stared at him. mesmerised. Birdie had never seen a pony close up before. She couldn't imagine why he'd be here in the dark tunnels on his own. Maybe he fell. Maybe he fell down into the bottom of the earth and found himself lost here. Birdie got up slowly from the wet ground, wiping her hands against her pinafore. Carefully she moved closer, shining the light at him, but he shied away. "Oh, I'm sorry. Don't you like it? I never meant to frighten thee." Bernie quickly lowered the beam. She wanted to say something, but it was as if all her words, her chattering words, had gone, taken away by this sight. She didn't know if she was happy or sad, or if she felt like crying or laughing, or even if she was still scared of the dark. But what Birdie did know, that she was glad that she'd found him, and he'd found her. He was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. One of the reasons that I wanted to write about pit ponies in my new book Birdie was because when I was a little girl, I used to watch the pit ponies being taken down the mines, and I always wanted to save them. But of course I never could. So I thought to myself, I'd love to write a book about them one day. And so Birdie is about a little girl who meets the last remaining pit pony in the village and decides she wants to save him. I hope that you enjoy reading about Birdie and the pit pony, and I hope you learned a little bit about pit ponies themselves. Before I go though, time tunnelers, I'd like to set you a challenge. I'd like you to write a story about a pit pony and a young miner who befriends it. What hurdles do they have to face together? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like down in the mines? And how do they help each other? What sort of relationship do they have? Think about how the young miner might feel when they have to leave the pony all alone down in the darkness as they go back home night after night. But mainly enjoy writing your story.